topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners. As you all know, this is the favorite day of my week because I get to be here and spend time with you. So I want to start off with a beautiful kindness story today. I was just returning back from New York. I was at the airport waiting for my bag to come in, and I could see the escalator going up to the departures, and a woman fell, and it was amazing. This gentleman had a backpack. I think he was traveling back from Patagonia or from South America, like based on like the conversations that were floating around, and he just dropped his backpack, the hiking bag, and it was amazing to see. He just dropped it and rushed up the escalator to help the lady. So like, it's almost like kindness is within his heart. So you don't have to look where you can be helpful to people. You can be helpful in any form or shape. So we didn't get to know a whole lot more about it, but I think so the lady was taken care of. So the goal is that take that 1 hour out of your time every month and help others, be kind to others. And for those of you who have got our books, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because season of giving is coming in, and with the partial profits, we do help out entrepreneurs at piva.org. So if you have not bought it, please buy our books, either Expert to Influencer or The Entrepreneur's Garden. And I'll tell you that you'll walk away with a lot of actionable tips and insights and wisdom. And also, I'm excited to share that I've started writing my book because there's so much fear around artificial intelligence and how can you bring the leadership into it. So I've put my head down and started the writing piece of it. And as the book evolves, I'll be keeping you updated. Let's invite our guests in. Welcome, John. Welcome, Dr. Ken. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Welcome. Thank you.
So we usually start out from the early years in life. Dr. Ken, do you remember a moment or a person that left a positive mark on you?
Oh, thank you for even asking that. So often when we do these things, we don't get asked those kind of questions. So yeah, and a lot of these names kind of circulate in your head throughout the year, depending on the situation. But just recently, I thought about my Aunt Polly when I was a child, and how we used to go to her house and visit. And it was a very rural part of the town that we lived in, and she had a garden in the back. And because I was a kid growing up in the city, my garden was the grocery store or whatever my mom would buy in a can, that sort of thing, and typical, But my Aunt Polly, no, she had a garden. And so when I went to visit her, she would say, she called me Kenny. She said, "Kenny, go out there and get us something." And I had this wonderful experience just going out there and just having the choice of picking this tomato or that squash or that cucumber, whatever it was. I got to explore and discover. So she had a huge effect on me by allowing me to just kind of explore the backyard garden.
Oh, yeah. Nothing like nature, it's so precious. How about you, John?
Yeah, so what's coming to mind for this one today is, in the spirit of being outdoors, is Ernie Caldwell. He was a scoutmaster, and I was in the Boy Scouts way back when. And we were doing nighttime orienteering. So I don't know if any of you guys have been out there trying to read your compass in the dark and orientate by the stars and all that. It was a very interesting first time I'd done that in the dark. And so I was getting nervous. I was fearful. I was, embarrassed, ashamed, all that good stuff that goes along with not being able to achieve, what you think is expected of you as a kid. And Ernie came up, or Mr. Caldwell came up to me at the time and said, "Hey, let's settle down, calm down. What's going on? What are you thinking?" And he asked me what was I thinking, and I felt safe enough to share that with him. And he goes, "Well, that's natural. You're out here in the dark. Have you ever done this before?" And so then he walked me through and calmed me through that. And so that experience is something that I tried to do, today, is that realizing that, helping leaders or helping others is that in that moment, they may be in the dark at that very moment. So it's just give them a safe passageway and back into the light. And then from that, they'll be able to start seeing, okay, yeah, this isn't so bad. We can get through that. I got this. So that to me was really impactful.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful stories, because these are the moments that shape us as we grow. And it doesn't matter. These are the moments that we can create for our teams and in organizations, where we can shape the culture and shape the workforce of tomorrow. So, John, as you all grew up, what were your primary interests and what was the initial direction that your life took you in?
So for me, it was been leadership, believe it or not, was crazy. I think back at it is being a Boy Scout in the troop. The story with that is, the adults are running the troop, and my buddies and I looked at each other and said, we can do a better job, and we don't like the direction the adults are taking this. And so, we asked the scoutmaster, who just happened to be my dad, by the way, and said, "Dad, this is what Vince and Greg and John and and all of us, this is what we want to do, Steve and all that." And he said, "Okay, fine. The adults will take a step back, give us your plan, and execute." And so, of course, we knew it all back then, right? We all do at that age. And so we cut our teeth making mistakes, learning, and realizing we don't know it all, but we do know something, and coming together as a team. And so that to me has been the whole thing of, going back to the basis of the book and just, leadership in general is, how to do that and how to be transformational in moral and ethics, ethical in your leadership and helping others.
How about you, Dr. Ken?
Yeah, it's funny. When I was a kid, I was the one who was always in the library, reading everything I could. I mean, I just read everything and paid attention. I guess you would call me a sponge. I tried to absorb everything. And then when I moved to California from North Carolina when I was 11, it was an entirely different world. So everything exploded. The sensories of living in San Francisco as a child just was so different than living in Charlotte, North Carolina, right? But what that did for me is that I learned how to listen. And that became a big part of what John and I do in our work today, is how do you take the time to just pay attention to everything that's going on around you, not what you're currently working on or not just what's happening within your close proximity, but what are the sounds you're hearing? What are the noises? What are the smells? I mean, those kind of things that just kind of help you are imbued with all the things that are going on in your life at the moment. And that kind of shaped who I am today.
Yes, definitely. Very powerful.
Hmm.
So how did yours and Dr. Ken's life intersect, and how did y'all come together?
So we have this great connector friend. Her name is Kate, and Kate's just a tremendous connector. And so we met through her, and then Ken can tell this story better than I can, but to me, it was very interesting is that here's a person that's like, okay, wow, we're really like-minded. Wow. He gets me, but he also gets my quirks, and he also gets where I'm coming from in the vision, right? The long-term strategic big picture. Because I always say work from the big picture, context. And so he's able to understand that big picture context of what I have, and then be able to shape it or guide me, give me advice, or disagree with me where needed. And just we have this complementary, and it's really been very cool, is that it's sort of like this type of, we're filling each other's gaps.
I think that's right. I think the complementary is probably the best word. And Kate got us together. I think she got us together because we were both former Cisco people, right? So the technology thing kind of brought us together. But John was working on his other book at the time, and he asked me to contribute to it. So we started talking a lot about intuition, and we started talking about what's innate versus informed and all that kind of stuff. So then the discussions became less about technology and more about life and leadership.
And so as y'all started connecting with each other, and it's like this: if you have two dishes or like a stack of dishes, whether you're pulling them out from a dishwasher or whether you're putting them in that drawer, they're going to cling and clang. So I'm sure that, like you said, that there were some quirks, even though you're complementary. How did y'all resolve those little disconnects?
Well, I love that analogy. Yeah. And, there's this new TV show that's out there called The Bear, right? That the guy's forever changed how I look at dishes, because I would used to just get a dish out of the cupboard and that would be it. But now I actually clank it to see what sound it makes. So when you say cling and clang, it's like, oh my gosh, you're speaking my new language. But John and I are much like that. I mean, we don't agree on everything, certainly, and our backgrounds are very, very different. But what I love is that kind of creative dissonance that comes along with just discussing. I like to say that everything starts with the connection, right? And it started with us, with Kate, and the connection that we had. But those connections lead to conversations, and that's where the magic happens, because those conversations turn into, John, you want to pick it up from here? Collaborations.
Exactly. And that's where, when you collaborate, that's the other thing too, is a lot of people think I got to be on the same page to collaborate. I got to be in the same ideology to collaborate. I got to be in the same, way of thinking or perspective. And that's not true. It's actually, the collaborations are best when you actually have opposing views or have totally different thoughts or coming at it from different directions. And that to me is the key, is that going back to communication or having the conversation. That's one thing, people that I work with, leaders I talk to all the time, folks, individual teammates that are having challenges. It's just have the conversation. That's the first question I ask. Have you had a conversation? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. And why not? And then there's an awkward silence, right? But I let that be awkward because I want to be uncomfortable. And that's that, disorientates them a little bit and makes them think, oh, well, why didn't we have that conversation? And to me, that's really that's the key to it, is getting the initial, like Ken said, I'll echo Ken here, have the conversation, and then that's going to get you to collaboration. And don't feel like you have to be the same to collaborate. Get in a couple more ideas if you want to. Also, some opposing views or alternate perspectives, and collaborate that way. And that's what I found to be the true value. Yeah, is getting, when people are able to see it differently than you do, and then it makes you think, disorientates you a little bit.
That's a really good point that both of y'all have made. And so many times, my clients will say that, oh, I pinged her and on the Slack because, or it could be Microsoft Teams, and there's so many tools that what happens is that the meaning can get lost in the written word and the translation is gone. And so in your experience, both of yours experience, what is it that keeps people from having that conversation? Why the hesitation?
Well, I think you're kind of circling around the big issue, and it's the communication tools we use, right? Because we kind of fall into that trap that we, have these tools that we use that are routine for us. My grandmother would have a newspaper. Okay. My son uses TikTok. So social media has kind of supplanted what we used to have for traditional ways of communicating and that sort of stuff. My mother would get on the phone and she'd call everybody. But now we carry these things with us, right? We carry these things we call a phone with us, but do we use them as phones? When was the last time you actually had a call on this thing? Most folks just text. So John and I, our communication of choice has been, in fact, texting. That's what he and I typically do. And then these things like these either podcasts or Zooms or WebExes or things like that. So it really depends on the audience, and also to some degree a generational audience that you're working with. Framing the workforce that we exist in today, there's at least 5 workforce generations working simultaneously, concurrently. So a good leader actually knows the audience and uses those tools that the audience expects.
And the one thing I'll add into there is, from a different perspective on this, is think about how much we're on autopilot throughout our day. You get up, you have your habits, your brain, your body your body consciousness, or your body itself, you're so used to doing things routine. Now, is your brain really engaged? And so that's where, throughout the day, be conscious of, am I following my habits, or am I truly listening and hearing what's going on, or observing or feeling what's going on around me with the individual? Person can say my teammate can say, oh yeah, I'm doing fine today, John, that's great. But what I'm feeling from them is totally opposite. And then be willing at that point to have what I call the 2 C's, the courage and commitment, to speak up and say, hey, glad you're saying you're great, but dude, I don't feel like you're feeling that great. And what's going on? Can I help? Or what's, and ask to be out there. Again, just being able to, be conscious of the fact that, you're not on autopilot. Really, really observe what's going on in the moment. Be in the now, some people call it.
Mm-hmm. So I want to bring up a tough conversation, because what has happened is that in our quest for not hurting people's feelings, and in our quest of allowing people space, what has also resulted, fortunately or unfortunately, that I've found is that, oh, what if I say that and the person gets displeased, or what if they're not open to it? And what could be a normal, even 20, 30 years back, that hey, I'm seeing it. And then when a person says, no, I'm good, you could call them out. Versus some people are oh, you are invading this invisible line. And so you're seeing that things are not right. You want to ask, and yet somebody's hesitant. What's a good way to approach that situation?
You want to go first? You want me to? Okay. All right. So what I do is I go back into, what we talk about that as being that transcendent leader in the book, the epidata, the feeling, what are you feeling around you? Can you get above the fray? And so the approach with that is, depending upon the situation in the forum, most people don't like to get called out or ask personalized questions in public today. So it's okay, take it for a moment, or just, take it off to the side. And that's that to me, it's, it's situational. But the thing is that regardless if it's in that moment, or I do it a few minutes later in a different setting where it won't be, the person can be more, have more of an opportunity to open up or be forthright. The point is, do it, right? And don't be afraid, right? A lot of people, we have this ideology war. What I think you're hinting at or going towards is, we have an ideology war. I mean, look at what we just went through with our election cycle, right? And the stuff we're going through now. That's all happening in it's impacting us on an individual to individual basis. And so what I hope happens is that, moving forward, is that we can all say, hey, you know what? Let's be individuals. Let's be, let's care for each other, have some compassion, have some empathize, which is part of that's a key. Empathize is a key element of a lead, to be a leader, and lead to lead, listen and empathize. Absorb.
Yeah, I think John's got it, and he's nailed it on this thing. This idea of interpreting and taking the time to, in fact, listen. When people are, when 20 years ago, as you said, it might have been okay. So you made me go back to, my wonderful Aunt Polly that I was mentioning before. She probably would just, hate living in 2024. I mean, she probably wouldn't even recognize it in some respects. I mean, the news, all the craziness going on, she probably would just push away and retreat. But in other ways, what she taught me, even all those years ago, is still valid today, and that's love. Lead with love. Lead with love in your heart. And I think that's what really helps, I think, people through the ages kind of communicate depending on their situation. And as John said, the ideologies that shift and change and mutate and all those things. So I think to answer your question kind of succinctly, Divya, is I think you listen, you pay attention, and you use that time. And I'll give you the first mnemonic from the book, the first acronym from the book. And it's listen, learn, interpret, shape, and then you can transform, and then you can evolve, and then you can nurture, LISTEN, right? So I think that's the most important thing. You listen, you interpret what you hear, and then you shape that for where you are in that situation.
Absolutely. And sometimes recently, and this popped up in my head, was because recently one of my clients came in and said, like, he's a manager, that I can see that something's not right with my employee, but I'm hesitant to see because, like, she has previously said that, oh, I feel unheard and unseen. So I said that then this is a perfect time for you to kind of jump in and say that, listen, I'm sensing, because what happens is with the remote work, it's hard to even pinpoint. So I told him, like, as you said, listen. And I said, you're doing a great job of listening. The key is what you could tell her is that I'm sensing something is not right. I just wanted to let you know that I'm here for you if you want to talk. So even if somebody doesn't want to talk, we can create that safe psychological space for people. So people know that they're cared for, that they've got somebody that they can go to. So great points. And you brought up about the different types of leadership, like transcendent, and you've also talked about transformation. So can you tell us what different types of leaders there are? And I know you've covered that in your book. So
yeah, since John covered the other two, I'll cover what we consider the first one. When everybody kind of comes into a leadership role, sort of the same way, it's more of a transactional role. That is, I do something, you do something for me, I do something back, and then we all get paid for it, or supposedly we do, right? So the idea is that we kind of exist on a transactional scale. Now that never really goes away. I mean, if you're a leader, you're going to have transactions. That's just how it works. You have folks that work in your organization. You're responsible for certain things. It's just that you add layers onto it, and you become more deep as a leader, and you become a little more nuanced as a leader. So this idea of becoming a transformational leader, and then again a transcendent leader, is where we go with the book. I think a lot of folks will readily accept the fact that you've got a transactional portion of your leadership style and you've got a transformational style. But what's different about the transcendent piece is that it's a little more aware. You spend a lot more time being aware. And instead of just making harsh decisions or transformational decisions that can go, 45 degrees this way or 90 degrees that way, you can actually do 1 or 2 degrees of discerning, right? So this idea that I make a small change here. So I have a conversation with this person and then I let them go. And then, 6 months later, they're far away from where they were headed, but they started out just a small little 1 degree vector change, you say. So I think that's probably the heart of the three leadership styles that we cover in the book: transact, transform, and transcend.
Yeah, and I'll just
what are any thoughts, John?
Yeah. I just where I'm going to go with this one is that Ken said a key point there is that when you're in a transcendent leader, you're more aware, right? And and there's two things as a leader: is you're going to be called into different situations at a moment's notice. So you may have to be that transactional leader and be in a transactional type of mindset. And then a few minutes later, the next meeting you walk into 10 steps away, you now have to be this transformationalist or even a transcendent. And to make that jump, this is where you have to internalize inside of yourself and know yourself pretty well and be able to pick up on the situation, read this situation, read the environment, read the people around you. And so when you go into that situation, you can provide what the organization needs, where and when it needs it. And so your ability to switch between the modalities, those three main modalities of leadership, is critical. And then that gets back into, for the transcendent, is being more aware, is you're more in touch with here, what's in your heart, leading from love again. That's where candid comes in. The metric for being that thoughtful leader: can I lay my head on the pillow on my pillow at night to go to sleep, knowing that I've done everything in my power possible to lead from love from my heart with the reverence for life? And then, did I have to make people apologize? It's that simple. Did I, for the way I said what I said, how I made them feel, how I made, maybe something I did, and you don't want those dids, right? So candid. And to me, that's really the hard part, because it's going back to what you had, we talked about a little bit earlier, is that in today's world, in some environments, in some cultures and corporations, or even inside the family unit, some family units, it's really hard to be candid. And, and finding that, coming from here, it's hard to do with the environment around you.
Absolutely. And these are some really great points that you're talking about. And the key point that really resonated with me was lead with love. And what happens is that even in some cultures, not like whether it's organizational or family, because every family has its own culture, and two different people bring, from different backgrounds, can bring their own cultures as well. The key is understanding people. That, like, another situation where somebody said, oh, why can't I just call out someone like that? And the idea is to understand, when you're talking about that listening piece, leading with love and listening to understand, is that how that person has been raised, having that empathy, Dr. Ken, as you mentioned, that if you have empathy, then you know that this is how this person has been raised. This is a young generation. The situations and the trends have shaped them. So if they are not raised to have that culture, they're not going to be able to see it. So when you create that space and when you are leading with love, what happens is that that person is open to positive candor. And the same thing, like where you're talking about, oh, I cannot have that conversation, you'll be surprised how people can open up and are willing to work on themselves. Have you all had any experiences like that?
Yeah, I think as you're talking about that, there's so many things we can explore with those thoughts. For me personally, when I moved to California, when my dad was there, it was a brand new family. My stepmother was from mainland China, right? And she would take me to Chinatown in San Francisco, and I was this little kid, this little white kid from North Carolina, and I was instantly accepted because I was with her. And she would show me around, and I got a chance to kind of move around and play mahjong with the old men in the, the culture center. It was wonderful, right? But most kids don't have that, right? And most people, as you kind of talk about it, these experiences, you need to create room for some of these experiences. And I bring it to modern day because as we come into a world where anxiety is so high right now with so many people, and a lot more folks have realized what neurodiversity really means and how learning capabilities, learning styles are very, very diverse. I think making room to listen, making room to empathize, making room to absorb, very, very important tools for a thoughtful leader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what you triggered with me with that question, Divya, was what we call the disorientating dilemma. And it's basically the reason you disorientating people. So they're used to growing up one way, or they're used to something, and then all of a sudden they become disorientated. That disorientation, in sometimes, it's at the surface, but really I'm talking about when you get disorientated and rocked to your core, like your fundamental belief structure. If you have a tragedy or something happens and you get hit with that, that's going to make you really question your fundamental beliefs. And I know that's not really the question, the way you phrase the question, but that's a part of it too, though, is that whether it's that really deep down or whether it's at the surface, that disorientation, to me, that's so important because it gets you out of your space. I mean, as a kid, I remember several experiences. Like my dad owned a Radio Shack, And so my childhood was much different than any of my friends because I was going to work. I'd walk from school. At the end of school, I wouldn't take the bus home. I'd walk to the store and then I'd work the rest of the day and then close up the store with dad and go home at night. Take it into, we just did a workshop last week for a really big corporation. And we put those leaders into a disorientated dilemma in a workshop. And it took them 5 minutes, I'd say 5 to 7 minutes to get reorientated. But the beauty of it was they reorientated as a team around the context of the question we were asking. And then they gave some really great feedback for what they need to be successful moving forward. But that came out because one person thought we meant this, another person thought we meant that. And in their conversations from the two different perspectives, information came out that would not normally have been given. And that was, again, why I think this disorientation piece is that as you as an individual with people around you, or if you're leading a team, take advantage, create those positive or psychologically safe disorientations, and then see what happens and that comes out of that. Use that to your advantage.
Absolutely. Great points both y'all have made. And so this kind of brings us back to you have talked about that different situations demand the same person to be different type of leaders. So do y'all have a story that you can show, or instances where a individual can go switching during the day, or from being a transactional to a transformational to being a transcendent leader?
I'll let John kind of talk a little bit more about this in a second, but I at least have to mention that one of the reasons that we came up with the book and the way the book kind of emerged as it has is we left room for stories, as you mentioned, because we thought, okay, well, we can write a lot about how to be a transactional leader, that sort of stuff in here, but we kind of kept a special space for first person kind of reflections of where across our own careers and lives, where we can talk about stories that kind of are good examples of a transcendent leader, for example, or a transactional leader. And I think that's what was really exciting about the book, and just how we actually kind of emerge as thoughtful leaders in general, is it's with our stories, and our stories help us become who we are. So John, I'll toss it to you.
Okay, yeah. So the story that's coming to mind was back from my Navy days when I was on a fast attack submarine. Okay, we're out in the middle of somewhere, can't talk about doing stuff I can't talk about. But the thing is at that moment in time, I had to go wake up my Lieutenant Moyer, the weapons officer, at 2 a.m. in the morning because some stuff was going on. And so I saw what I didn't realize at the time is that I was about to experience the 3 modalities within about a 2-minute time frame from this man. And, and that's what sort of, we laugh about it now. I didn't put this story in the book, but it's, one I talked to. So what was really interesting was waking him up. Okay. It's very transactional, right? Petty Officer Ruppel, what are you waking me up in the middle of the morning for? This better be good. You better have a solution for me, and just all that transactional type. And we got up and, it was transactionally started. Then it went into, he saw that I was nervous and maybe a little bit afraid and timid or waking up. Then he automatically understood that, went to transcendent, and basically from his heart, then just said, hey, settle down. It's okay. You just don't think of me as your weapons officer. Just think of me as a human being. Okay. Now, what do we have to do? And then we went in and transformed. And so I said, okay, sir, here's the data points and here's the vision and solution I have for what the team and I figure and what we think we need to do and why we need your permission to sign off on this. What do you think? And then he said, okay, asked a few leading questions, answered, okay, based on what you're telling me, here's my vision. I concur with you guys. All right, give me 5 minutes. I'll be up there. But yes, start proceeding. You got my authority. Go. And so that, to me, when I think about that, after writing the book and now being a consumer of the book and really, experiencing what we put into the book in these ways, that story just really resonates with me as one of those, really quintessential moments. I didn't realize at the time how much it's really impacted me.
Yeah, I think stories in general help a leader convey the value to their teams, because it's you can make a policy change, you can publish some sort of standard or whatever it may be, but it's through a story that people, enjoy being a person, to be honest. So this idea of being able to tell a story. So it's not in the book either, but we have a new mnemonic I'll give you now. It's called SING, an acronym, SING. S, of course, is stories, storytelling. I is involve others, which I love John's story so much because it involved not just his perspective, but perspectives of other folks around that story and that situation. And then the N is kind of interesting. It's notice the invisible. And that's a little more difficult to think about. But if you really kind of are in that transcendent mode and you kind of close your eyes and kind of listen and pay attention to everything that's going on around you, it's easy to notice the things that you may have forgotten about or you didn't notice before. The bird singing outside, the lawnmower going on in the backyard, that sort of stuff, where you kind of, you typically will tune out what we always call noise or attenuate noise. But if you start listening, you start paying more attention. And this works really well as you're kind of walking through an organization or, listening and empathizing with your team. You start to understand and hear more, and not just with your ears, but with your heart, right? And then finally, G is you grow as an individual. You grow as a leader, but you also grow others too. So SING, sing.
Very powerful and easy to remember, and beautiful story, John. Thank you for your services. And what a beautiful story of that. All three in one moment. And so tell us a little bit more about your book. And as we wrap up the show, where can our audience find you? Where can they connect with you? Whether it's through your website or LinkedIn, and how can they reach you? And of course, tell us about your book as well.
Yeah. So for ourselves, if you go to Lead the Flow on the banner that's going across the screen here, that page or that specific link, we have the book there, which links out to Amazon. But more importantly is you can share your story. And that's really what we want to do, is we want to build a community of stories and let people share with each other in their stories. And then by sharing, then we can care for one another and help each other. As far as getting a hold of us direct, we're both on LinkedIn and also on that Lead the Flow website that you see there, leadtheflow.com. If you go to the team page, we have tied into that buttons that you can request meeting times with us. And we have a schedule up there, a calendar. You can book some time with us. However we can be helped. That's
Yeah, what's been really exciting over the past several months since we released the book is that it's impacting, as John kind of alluded to earlier, it's become more than what we kind of intended. People are discovering things that we didn't even know was in the book, right? So it's really great to kind of visit people. So we've been doing some book tours. You can find the book anywhere. I mean, Amazon, Barnes Noble, places like that. And you can actually request at your local bookstore, even if it's not a huge chain store, but a local bookshop. Just ask them, say, hey, can you get John and Ken to come? And we'll be happy to come see if we can visit you if we're in that neck of the woods, as they say. It's been really a wild tour. I've been as down to Miami, all the way up to New York. John and I were in Michigan last week. So it's kind of a bit of a whirlwind, quite honestly. But people can, again, reach out to us via the Lead the Flow website, which is an excellent place to find us, or via LinkedIn. We're relatively easy to find. But ask us, and maybe you'll see us in your home neck of the woods.
Well, that's fantastic. And looks like I'm having some technical glitch. It happens. And this is, again, as we talk about, that you don't lose your cool, a good time to demonstrate that leadership. And thank you both for joining us. I enjoyed the conversation, and I'm sure our audience did it as well. And as you can see, there's a lot to be achieved from reading the book. So it's leadtheflow.com. Check it out and get the book. And I'm sure that you'll be getting a lot of value from it. So thank you, John and Dr. Ken. And thank you, dear audience, for joining us. I know you can see me. You can hear me. So you are the soul of our show. So do let us know. How can we serve and support you? And thank you, Juan, for making the show technically possible. Take care.
Thank Thank you.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.